Hello and welcome. I am here with Angele Close, who is going to bring us into our inner world, the whole part of low demand parenting that is our work, how we show up for our kids with all of our many parts intact, and how we actually heal and grow right alongside our kids. Welcome, Angele.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. It's great to be
I'm,
here.
I'm so excited to talk to you because this is something that I feel really personally passionate about is that a big part of why low demand works for our family is because it works for me on the inside, that I know how to let go of things that are too hard. I know how to listen and trust myself. I know how to respond when I get triggered by the things that are happening around me. When those things weren't true, this parenting just snowballed. The weight I carried was bigger, heavier, and harder to manage. So, in many ways, this is the secret sauce, the magic of how we actually live this out.
Mhm.
And I know that we're going to talk about IFS. So, we'll go ahead and define that if you can in your first answer. But you shared with me that IFS has changed so much about how you parent, how you mother, and that it became a lifeline for you as you walked through your journey. Can you tell us a little bit more, both define for us what IFS is, but even more than that, how it changed you?
Sure, I'd love to. So, IFS is short for internal family systems, which is a type of psychotherapy. The creator of IFS is Dr. Richard Schwartz, initially a trained family systems therapist. And then it was actually working with his clients. I believe his first clients struggled with eating disorders. He started to realize just in the way that family systems work with different members of the family and we understand dynamics and we try and help those dynamics transform and shift. The same is true with individual people. And so he followed that inclination 30 years ago. It's been around a while, but it's gained in popularity. People are learning about it, and it's really effective and helpful. I actually didn't learn about it through my graduate training. I've been a therapist for almost 20 years and I'm from Canada. So it was when I moved to the States about 6 years ago that I learned about this modality and was kind of resistant at first, actually. We had just moved here. My dad happened to pass the day we moved to Chicago. So that was stressful. And then COVID happened a few months after. Adjusting, moving, and all of these stressors at the same time was really hard for me, obviously.
Mm.
I have three children, and getting the kids to adjust to moving and adapting through that was really hard. My eldest son is neurodiverse, and it was at that time developmentally that his struggles, his symptoms started to really amplify. And so parenting became really hard. I had been a mindfulness meditation teacher, and that was my coping. I found myself as a mom where the ways I was coping, like I would sit and meditate, and it just wasn't helping the ways that it had
Mm-hmm.
helped before. And I think it was serendipitous timing that I learned about this thing called IFS. And I read Dick Schwartz's book, You Are the One You've Been Waiting For. When I read it, Amanda, it was like all the pieces of the puzzle clicked in terms of past clients that I'd struggled to help, in terms of my own experiences in my own mind and my emotions and reactions, understanding that, of course, we're parts. And I'd seen this with clients, but IFS gives a language for it, a language and a map. Instead of like in mindfulness, for instance, the practice is you notice your thoughts and feelings show up, but then you try and let them go. Well, at this time in my life, like they weren't going. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
little kids vying for your attention and pay attention to me. And it was really loud inside and it felt really messy and a lot. And sitting there to let them go away was like ignoring your kid. You wouldn't do that. I did a couple of the meditations and it's kind of a how do we guide? How do we get curious about these parts of us instead of ignoring them? How do we go to them and try and understand them? And it was life-changing. It helped me feel a lot less shame and empowered because I had something that I could do to help myself. And so it
Mm-hmm.
really was like an anchor at a time where I really needed something and my kids needed me. It changed my whole career because then I started training in it and learning it. And I'm really passionate to bring this method, if we call it a method or a map, to parents because it's life changing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I also do IFS therapy and have for a while with my therapist. I found it as a late diagnosed autistic person when we first introduced parts. I found it really scary. I didn't like the idea that there were parts of me that I wasn't just somehow intrinsically whole. I think sometimes metaphors are difficult for me to grasp. It felt literally like I was fragmenting all of a sudden. And I know that happens for everybody, but it was really scary for me in a way because I didn't really understand that it is essentially a metaphor. You are still literally a whole person. You're just exploring
Mhm,
aspects of your experience. So I
mhm,
just wanted to name both that I'm in love with this practice and also that at least initially we had to tread lightly with the exploration because it coincided with so much unmasking and re-examining who I believed that I was throughout
right.
my journey. In the end, it's been hugely helpful for the unmasking journey and for relearning who I am and who I was and how
Mm,
I was compensating and coping for the world not being built for a brain like mine. And
mhm,
I see this all the time in the people that I coach and the messages I get on Instagram that we're really struggling with perfectionism, with feeling like we have to be on all the time for our kids, that any little slip, any little emotion, any little dysregulation from us amplifies in our
yeah.
kids. And also feeling like this is our fault, that at some point along the way as parents, we missed something, we messed something up, and we probably did because that's life, because we're human. We did make mistakes. And so those mistakes become amplified in our brains, feeling like if we had only gotten a diagnosis sooner, if we'd only found low demand sooner, if we'd only pulled our kids out of school sooner, or if we'd only ended a relationship sooner, then we wouldn't be in this terrifically difficult spot. IFS helps parents shift their relationship to themselves, particularly this idea of the inner critic or
Mhm,
the sense of failure. You
mhm.
mentioned that it's not the same as some of the other practices like mindfulness meditation. There are unique movements that come up in the IFS journey. So tell us a little bit about how that looks.
Yeah, absolutely. I always get so frustrated when I read a self-help book that tells us to just ignore the critical voice or the thought, change your thoughts, and then just do this, right? Because it just doesn't work. We can't. And we don't want to because our parts, and I appreciate that some folks don't love the parts word. So sometimes I'll say things like energies or reactions within us. So just whatever language fits, there's permission there. All of our parts, all of our reactions inside belong. And even that, so it seems radical that if I would say even an inner critical part, if we call it an inner critic, it has some good intention for us. That idea that all of our parts belong and they ultimately want the best for us is liberation. It's true self acceptance. We're not trying to reject any parts of ourself or even, I mean, some parts can be problematic. So we want them to shift or change and transform. That's okay. And that's what's possible with the method of IFS. When we get curious and get to know that inner critical part, it's almost like a conversation with that curiosity and not judging it, but try and understand what's it trying to accomplish by being harsh on you or driving you in these negative ways. Every client I've worked with and myself, we always find a reason. We always find some good intention, like I'm trying to protect you. I'm afraid that we're going to be judged, or I'm trying to protect you from some harm or some experience that probably in life we have experienced. So it makes sense that that part's there. We want to get to know and understand that part. Where did you learn that from? What role are you playing in my life? It's usually got some concern or some fear, and that's why it's doing its job. And so from there, usually there's great understanding, right? As you've done this work, Amanda, it's like, oh, instead of hating this part or thinking this part is an inner bully or an inner enemy, it's like, oh, thank you. You get this organic compassion and understanding and gratitude because you're not trying to create harm. Often these parts, they don't even know that's the impact. They are just concerned about protecting us and they have these fears. So there's the gateway and the bridge for us. These parts sometimes think they're trapped in time. They think we're still a kid, that their job is necessary. And so to be able to say, I'm actually in my 40s, I'm actually an adult, and I'm actually okay with not everyone liking me. It's not as threatening now in my life as it was when I was a child. And so we can help that part shift with that new understanding and then invite it. Like, do you want to take a different role in my system? And I found that these critical parts usually make really great consiglieres rather than it be an inner bully that you're fighting against inside, which feels painful. It's like a little buddy that's there to guide you. You can ask that part, what role do you want to play? It becomes this collaborative negotiation. And it's transformative. Working with moms all this time, like, our inner critics, to be that, what is a good mother and what is that perfect parent? The critics can be really, really loud and potent because the stakes feel really high. We do love our kids and we want the best for them. There can be one or maybe even more really loud inner part that feels like it's against us. So it's
Hmm.
transformational to be able to shift that relationship inside and feel just more self acceptance, less shame, right? Because the critic can really drive parts of us that feel shame.
One of my protectors, I call him my pokey protector. I imagine him like in a cartoon, if you have a little knight who has a really long staff and
Mhm.
he's kind of young and a little bit impulsive. And he
Mhm.
just always jumps right out in front of me and is like, hey, you, what are you
Yeah,
doing? Why are you coming near her? I'm like, it's okay. They're allowed. Staff down. We're okay.
that's
Originally, he poked me a lot with that long staff. Like, you get back. It's not safe out there. And kept me really small, kept me really afraid. And now we've reoriented where he's like my very first,
mm,
the vanguard of my protection system. He makes me smile, right? Like I think he's so dear and funny. And
yeah.
so I'm able to laugh like when it often comes up with my husband if he's standing over top of me asking me if I fed the cat yet. And my little protector is like, hey, you get back.
Yeah.
Yeah. She didn't do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And instead of feeling shame or, oh, I should have fed the cat and now he hates me, I'm just like, oh, no, I didn't. It
That's
just
right.
shifts how I engage in those moments, knowing that I have these parts. So I'm going to give you a scenario that I hear all the time from parents. So your kid yells at you and calls you names. And people are always telling me, I understand. Low demand says that all kinds of communication are telling us something. I don't want to shut the communication down, but it hurts
Yeah.
because my dad yelled at me or because I once dated someone who had that exact same energy,
Mhm.
or it sounds just like the way I talk to myself, the way those inner critics are showing up right now is very harsh, or because I wanted to yell at my parents like that and no one ever let me. I was sent to my room or I was ignored or I was neglected. There's a reason. And we
Mhm.
have to get to know that reason. Using low demand as like a universal, well, just let it go. It doesn't
Yeah.
work. It has to be
Yeah.
particular.
Yes. So relate. I have a son who definitely his nervous system will be a fight response for a lot. And so that was troubling for me as his mom because my nervous system would go into freeze. When he was having a real rage episode playing a fun family game of baseball, I just became a deer in a headlight. My body took over, and my husband was like, whoa, where are you? And so we walked back from the park, and I was getting curious, like, oh, yeah, something's really in my way. I knew because of my training, this is my trauma response, a default mode within my system that's getting activated in the face of someone yelling and screaming and in a rage. That's what all parents will encounter. I believe the parenting journey is a journey of understanding ourselves and healing. It's an opportunity because along the way, we will get these. In IFS, we call them trailheads to know that you have stuff that's getting activated. Those are the moments where you know all the things in your head. You have the part that's ingested all the stuff on how to be low demand and you understand your kids' difficulties and what they need. But in those moments, that's when it's really, really hard because our bodies, our parts, they get disconnected from all that information and the nervous system is just going to respond in milliseconds. The more we go to these parts and get curious about them, about what happened for me, you'll discover a protector. As you described yours, I have one that's like a soldier. And if it perceives I'm being disrespected, it's gonna get stern. It has a way it talks. And you find yourself going, that didn't sound like what I want to say when I'm regulated. These parts from our childhoods, they've been around a long time. They just act. They kind of can hijack us in that moment where there's intense emotion. And so when we can, in a calm state, get curious about them, part of that update is that's actually my son. I'm in my 40s, and they're like, huh. That's what I discovered when I got to know the soldier part. It's like its main concern was just make sure your boundaries are protected, that nobody's treating you poorly. And like you said, those are great parts. I love that part. And that's important. I just don't want it to jump in those parenting moments without fully understanding what's going on. There is no threat here because if we haven't worked on them and processed them, our pain from our earlier life and our traumas from our childhood, then they're just going to swoop in and deal with what they think is a threat in life. Stuff comes up. We do experience fear, humiliation, embarrassment, difficulty. We have parts that they're called firefighter parts, and they'll help us cope with that to numb that out. And then we have these protectors are protecting the exiled parts. Exiled parts tend to be the younger, more vulnerable, tender ones that through our childhood, both from misunderstandings, abuse, or traumas. So when you're in an environment as a child and you can't process these feelings that you have, these experiences, those get shoved down and pushed down, right? It's very adaptive. It's wonderful that we have this capacity to live through some really difficult childhood experiences. For instance, if you grew up in a family, you're not allowed to be angry. You're shamed or sent to your room. Anger is a human emotion. We all have it, and we're hardwired for it. An exiled part's going to carry that anger. And those protectors are going to work to make sure, at all costs, to suppress that anger. But now we know that's not healthy. So later in life, it's not going to serve us when we're continually suppressing our anger. Protectors are trying to protect these exiled parts from getting triggered, but that is what needs to be witnessed and healed so we can unburden some of these beliefs. And there is a element within each person called self energy, capital S. Self. It's not a part, but it's core essence. You can use different words for it. I love the word soul. There's Buddha nature, Christ consciousness. They come from various contemplative traditions, but it is that sense of non-brokenness. No matter what's happened to you, you have self-energy. We have creativity, we're in flow, we have curiosity. We're not judgy when we're in self, we're curious, we're open. This is within all of us. It's like, oh, I'd love to be a calm, confident parent. And that is very difficult when our parts are trying to live our life for us in the way that they needed to in our early childhood. With the IFS applying the practices, it's really a way of understanding ourselves and going inside and getting to know our parts. They learn to trust that self energy is what leads.
Yes. And for those of us who are PDAers, it actually brings us a greater sense of autonomy and control.
Yeah.
There is an internal dysregulation to having the parts pop up and take over that can be really threatening to a PDAer, in particular, an adult PDAer. This integration work actually makes you feel safer with yourself and decreases your threat response internally by knowing them and feeling like I have responsibility for them. That makes that big self,
Yeah.
like what I call big me. It makes big me feel like I got this. I know these people. I know how to work with them. And it brings me a lot more internal regulation within my system
Yes.
to befriend them. It's making me think about how much we carry as parents through our daily lives. Good parents serve hot meals around the table, and good
Mhm.
parents always respond to their kids calmly. And we have so much shoulding that we do that, of course, is going to get our whole internal system all riled up trying to meet those expectations. Here in low demand, we talk about shifting that model. We interrogate in a loving way those expectations and proactively let them go. And I feel like this process is really integral to redefining what parenthood means to us in a way that isn't like, I love the title of your book, has to do with unburdening. I think that unburdening is the emotional core of low
Mhm.
demand. So tell us a little bit about what it looks like to drop demands for ourselves in a way that is healing for our identity as parents?
I love that question because it just makes me go into that place in my body of the
Mm.
moments when I've been able to do that for myself and the lightness you get. Because you're right, there's such heaviness. The expectations right now on parents are just deafening, impossible. If in times where I have perceived that I'm going to be judged by other parents or people will see me as not a good mom, my whole stomach just clenches. The whole torso is like, right? If you work with an IFS therapist, there's a whole ritual and expanded process of updating that's like unburdening. Once you've witnessed that part that's has feelings, has sensation, has beliefs about itself, the world. I'm not lovable. Belonging is not possible unless I conform. I will be all by myself if I don't go along. You invite that part. Do you want to release and unburden these beliefs and these feelings of shame and not good enoughness that you feel when you think the other moms are judging you? For instance, there's a process in IFS, you might give it to the earth or to fire or air or whatever that part wants to do. The imagination of the mind is amazing in this process of healing. And then when that's released, it feels so freeing and liberating because we're not hindered by these burdens anymore. From that self energy, we're like, okay, so what do I choose? What are my values and how do I want to parent to be able to anchor to myself?
I'm wondering about one aspect of IFS that I have found really powerful, which is that it also allows room for my kids to have their own parts.
Yes.
There's this dominant cultural fear. I don't want my kids to go to therapy one day to fix what I broke in their childhood. The ultimate success is for your kids not to go to therapy one day because you didn't
Right.
F them up in their childhood. And I just find that so backwards. I hope my kids have enough self curiosity and self trust to go to therapy one day. I hope that my kids go to therapy so that they can heal from the mistakes I made, because
Yeah.
I am a human and I'm allowed to make mistakes, which is a new belief that I've created for myself. I used to believe I had to be perfect, and that was the only way I could keep the people I loved safe. And now I've updated it. Say
Yeah.
I am a mistake maker. And I love that about myself because it means I'm trying, it means I'm alive. I wonder how you hope that this process
Mhm.
of unburdening our parenting, how does that actually change the way that we parent, the way that we show up for these dysregulated, challenging, and ultimately incredibly beautiful kids that we've been gifted to journey with?
Despite being a therapist, when push came to shove, I was like, I know how I should be, but I'm not showing up in that way. It was very evident. I had some learning, some healing to do. By going to all my parts and working with them and bit by bit unburdening them, I came to feel that inner critic could soften. I was less concerned about being perceived perfect by others and being able to be imperfect. The shame lessened and dissolved. And that's good for my kids. A mom who's spiraling all the time and seeing the world, anticipating all the threats, I was less able to be a safe person to them, right? Because I was less present. Parenting sets us up in that way because it's so challenging at times. And it offers us those trailheads to go inside and see what within us hasn't been healed and processed yet. And we can do that work. It's not like, oh, you have to go to therapy twice a week for 10 years. This gives parents a lot of hope because I know I felt that feeling when I thought, oh, once I'd learned this, I had a part that gave me a montage of all the mistakes I'd made.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, brace yourself. And I'm willing to, like you said, I'm open to knowing I'm imperfect and to doing repair and to saying, oh, listen, not to shame spiral, but to hear that and know that we're humans, we're all on a journey and what we're modeling to our kids. I can use that language and say, I'm sorry, I had a part that's just really was frustrated that you didn't put away the thing that you said you were going to put away. It helps in how I communicate with them. So it's a day-to-day stuff, but also the deeper work we can do to really unburden and heal some of the stuff we came into parenting with that's not serving us or our kids.
Thank you so much for taking a really honest look at yourself. If there's one macro story about self-work that I could change, is that it's weak. It's
Yeah.
actually, it's so brave. It's so strong to update those stories and to do that in front of others. So yeah, when my kids walk in and I'm sobbing in therapy, I'm like, oh, I'm doing therapy. This is what it looks like, because I know, I trust that they are witnessing my strength. my mom has the courage to feel. My mom has the courage to go inside. My mom has the courage to show up for herself so she can show up for me. I want that to be their internal story that they carry forward with
Yeah.
them. I just want to
Yeah.
reflect back to you that you are doing that here in the world for all of us. And I'm so grateful to have been the recipient of it today.
I think modeling that to our kids is so powerful. There's so many parents where we wear these masks. We think we have to give a perception. And being a therapist, you get to hear so many stories and know the struggles that people are hiding because they feel ashamed. So if me opening up can help anyone feel a little less alone or a little more human and a little more deserving of self-compassion and self-kindness, then I'm game to do it.
Absolutely. We'll include information about how people can connect with you and find IFS therapists here in the United States. And I imagine that there are some registries around the world. So we'll try to include that information in the show notes, as well as a couple of books and workbooks for starting this journey. Hopefully, maybe you're listening to this in 2026 and you want to check out Unburdening Motherhood, and it will be in the world and ready to be read.
Amanda, I do have a little video series if moms want something now and the book's not out yet. Just short little clips of practices so people can find that on my website if they sign up and they can just follow along and get some things they can practice right now using IFS.
Wonderful. Thank you for
Great.
making that. We'll make sure that that's available here too. And that's a free
Great.
resource that people
Yes,
get.
it is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for making that so
Yeah.
accessible. Thank you for this conversation.